Well, real quick, Brian, before you do
Oh,
that,
yep, yep.
it's very easy for people to point out when you're wrong about something. And I don't
Sure.
think people get credit for being right on stuff enough. So I did want to shout you out. I know you touched on it just a second ago, and I was going to bring this up as well. But you spent a good bit of time on last week's podcast talking about how difficult of a course this was. And I watched a little bit on Saturday, I believe it was. I turned it on, and the very first words that I heard them speak was how difficult of a course it was. It was Oakmont, I think is what you called it.
Yeah,
And
Oakmont's
they were
no
talking
joke.
about how this is a course that humbles the best golfers in the world because when you mess up a little bit on some courses, it's okay. But messing up a little bit on this course is messing up a lot of it. It's very
Yeah,
easy to get yourself into a terrible situation. And it basically they were regurgitating the same things that I heard you say on Thursday. They were saying on Saturday. So I like look at Brian, knowing exactly what he was talking about. It kind of gives a little bit of credence to what you were saying. So I did just want to shout you out for that and the knowledge
I
that you shared
appreciate it.
last week. So,
And
all right, guys, welcome back. We are at it once again, episode 19, White Widow Sports. I am your host, your favorite cast member. The only reason why you're tuning in, just kidding. I am Brad, joined here by Brian, my brother, and Chris, as always. Guys, how's your week been? Brian, how was the beach?
Pretty good. Just chill time. A lot of driving for sure. So just kind of getting back into the swing of things, coming back, cutting grass, doing household chores, all that fun stuff that you get to do when you come back from vacation. But overall, pretty good. I had a good time, and I believe the family had a good time as well.
Uh, Not a great week, but I'm looking forward to being here at the house a lot more. I've been outside the house taking care of a lot of urgent things that have come up, so it's good to be home. There's no place like home, says Dorothy.
Especially when you get to sit around and talk about sports.
Hmm.
So I guess I'll leave it up to you guys. Which one do y'all want to talk about first? We got a few things to talk about today.
I'd say we kick off with the hockey since it's finished up.
It's finished up. Sure, sure. Uh, yeah, hey man, great to see Florida repeat as champion, and more importantly, keep Canada out of the conversation for another year. I think we're up to 32 now. It's great to see that. Yeah, I see you guys on social media. I know they're full of Canadian players on every American hockey team, but you know you've got American football players on every CFL team, probably a majority of the roster. So we know it's something petty to brag about in the grand scheme of things, but makes it more fun.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
when you go 32 years without winning the championship and what's supposed to be your nation's favorite pastime, you got to have something to try to save face on. And I guess that's their attempt at it. But the Stanley Cup is staying where it belongs with the back-to-back World War champs. And our trophy case is full. Yours is looking a little empty. And it's kind of like being a Dallas Cowboys fan. You can hang on to something that happened over 30 years ago if that's what you need to do. But the time and place of the current is Florida Panthers back-to-back champs, and we're happy to see it suck at Canada.
Yeah.
And big surprise being down in Florida. I figured there would be a lot more Panther swag available, but really not a lot. So I found that quite unfortunate. I was looking forward to my Canadian or my Florida Panthers jersey, but yeah, not going to happen this trip for sure.
Those can
Good
get
old
very
Amazon.
Brian's looking a little gray today. He's got the gray walls, the gray hat, the gray curtains, the gray shirt. Like he would have loved to have shown up today wearing his cool like Florida Panthers championship gear. And the state
Yeah,
of Florida, which we talked about it before we went on air here. Florida is apparently the hockey capital of the world. When you look at the Panthers, you look at the Tampa Bay Lightning and the recent success that they've had. It's like, man, you got to represent better in your merch shops. I mean, you go to Dick's Sporting Goods and not even see anything for hockey, and you've got all these championships in your state. Like, come on, do better.
I agree. But no, there was not a lot. I stopped at a couple of different places while I was down there and couldn't find anything to bring back. It was kind of sad.
Yeah, so obviously that was a 4-2 series win for the Panthers, and that one finished up. And that's kind of the weird thing about having a weekly podcast is you almost have to figure out what's going to happen between recordings, and this was a little bit of a longer gap between them because if you guys remember, last week's podcast was filmed a couple of days earlier than usual because of Brian being out of town. We kind of had to make that happen a little bit differently, and of course, it's Father's Day weekend and all that stuff too. But the series that we expected to be over is not. So moving over to the NBA Finals, Chris, we've got a game 7. Did you ever think we'd make it here?
No, I thought 6 was possible, and I never thought Indiana would be in position to win this. They can threaten, sure, maybe make you sweat a little bit, but I didn't think they'd ever be in position to win the championship, and now that's just as real a possibility as anything.
Yeah, I mean, I told Chris going into Game 6, the day before, the news came out about Halliburton having a right calf strain, and he was going to do everything in his power to play. And it seemed like they were forming that narrative going into it, like, oh, Halliburton's hurt, he might not play. That's going to be their best player, certainly the most clutch player as we've seen in these playoffs. The game before, he only had 4 points, I think, for the whole game when they went down 3-2. And so now going into it, it's must-win territory. They've got to go back to back to win the championship once they go down 3-2. And so for him to have this injury, you don't even know if he's going to play. If he does play, how effective is he going to be? So for them to come back and have that Game 6 performance, it was, I think, in the third quarter, maybe beginning of the fourth quarter. At one point, it was a 30-point lead that they had. I know it finished at like maybe a 16, 17-point game. I don't remember what the final score was, but they called the dogs off late in that game just because they didn't have to have their guys out there, especially the ones that are banged up. They knew that they had forced a Game 7, so at that point, save what you can going into that last game, and now it's going to be all chips on the table. So very, very surprised, and honestly, probably the best word for it is impressed. I am impressed
Yeah.
by the Pacers to not only make this a series, but to make it a one game for it all, a Game 7 being forced is just incredible. So, Chris, I guess seeing what you've seen from these teams, are you standing strong, holding faith that it is a OKC championship, or where do you stand as far as, is this a true coin flip 50-50 final Game 7?
Realistically, it's a coin flip, but I will stay strong with the Thunder. Right there at home, get that energy burst, go out and win it. And maybe in the history books, you'll be like, of course they did. They won 68 games, they won a championship. But in the moment, now, obviously, you're going to have to remember like they took the hardest possible path. But I think they will win it. And you know, if anyone sees this and wants to comment, and I turned out to be wrong, well, I've been wrong 3 times in this series, so I'm not gonna bet the house on that. It's just what I feel is going to happen. I think they'll get their championship.
Yeah, and on the off chance, this is just kind of a random question for Chris because Brian wouldn't
Okay.
have any idea. On the off chance that Indiana does win this, who do you think deserves Finals MVP if it was going to be a Pacers player?
Well, I mean, I guess it's going to be Halliburton, even though he's not always the star. He seems to always get the media credit. And a lot of times in a lot of sports that goes further than actually being the best player.
Yep. Well, the reason why I asked is I saved this picture on my phone, so y'all have to forgive me for looking down. I'll try to hold it up a little higher. So T.J. McConnell,
Mhm.
kind of the sixth man off the bench. I think he's had to play a lot more because of Halliburton's injuries and everything. But he actually made NBA Finals history. So going through the 6 games that they've played so far, this is already the most by any player on the bench in Finals history. 68 points, 28 assists, 19 rebounds, and 14 steals. And that's not even including what he will add on in a Game 7 here. Just to he has not only kept the Pacers in games that maybe they shouldn't have been, he's legitimately turned the tide. He has been a momentum swing at times in this series. And with Halliburton having such an up and down, possibly health related performance, it was a name that I wanted to throw out because, Siakam obviously has been very big for that team. Halliburton, you can say they wouldn't even be here if it wasn't for him, and you wouldn't be wrong. But what McConnell has done so far this series, like I said, it is history making. And maybe it's unique enough that I think he deserves some sort of recognition for it, especially if Indiana were to pull this out. That being said, I could see a world where Indiana wins the series and SGA still gets finals MVP because I think that's rare for the losing team to have the MVP. But
Yeah.
this is one of those situations where the numbers that he's put up, the season that he's had, there might just not be anybody that can hold a candle to that.
Yeah. I'm not sure I've seen that happen ever, but there's nothing to say it can't, I guess. Unless there is, and I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not sure. You are much more well versed in the world of basketball than I am. So if you don't know, I'm certainly not going to know.
I don't have the strict rule book right here in front of me, so
Yeah. It's very commonplace that the MVP goes to the winning team, but like I said, the best team and the best player aren't always the same thing. They don't always align, especially in a basketball sense. And so
Mhm.
you can say SGA is by far and away the best player in these finals, and his performances speak for themselves. And if the Pacers were to come out and have a good team victory, SGA could still deserve that individual award of Finals MVP, and that might be something interesting that happens too, if possible. Like you said, it might not even be.
Yeah.
My take on it is I'm going to go with Vegas odds and flip this coin. And yeah, there we go. That's my pick. I'll let y'all
That
know.
wasn't a pick.
I will let y'all know next episode what it landed on and whether I
cool.
was right or wrong.
I'm sure.
I have a feeling Brian will be right.
I will also play last night's lottery in a few days.
I like Brian's odds in that game.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So go ahead, Chris.
Well, I thought we were going to go ahead and skip over something I'm looking forward to a little more than I thought I might be, and that's college baseball. World Series finals coming up, I believe, today, as of recording, Saturday. Tonight we have a game one, best of three. Got Coastal Carolina, LSU. Coastal won the championship in a pretty big surprise to, I think, anyone paying attention back in 2016. I think they were the first smaller school to win a championship like that. So could happen again. I don't have the numbers of when LSU last won. If they have, I'm sure they have, but I can look that up while someone else shares their thoughts here.
Well, the one thing that I wanted to bring up, I've got Christine's uncle is a huge LSU fan. They lived in Louisiana for a long time. He's in the Army and was stationed at a base there in Louisiana for a long time. So he loves LSU. I think to a lesser extent they like the Saints, but I try not to hold that against them too bad. But he and I were talking back several weeks ago. I started looking into the LSU roster because he was trying to come up with somebody. And I started looking at it and I realized something crazy. If you look at the LSU pitchers, they've got a sophomore who's 6'5, 245. They've got a redshirt sophomore who's 6'8, 252. And they've got a freshman who is 6'9, 253. And my question to him was, are you recruiting a bullpen or the Avengers? I know size doesn't translate to talent and everything like that, but to me, there's just no reason why your pitchers need to be this big. I'm sure there's a lot of science that goes into release point and the length and velocity, and he's closer to the base technically when he steps off the bag and all of that stuff. I get it to an extent, but I was just amazed at some of those numbers. I mean, a 6'9", 250-pound freshman. Imagine what he's going to look like by the time he gets to being a junior or senior. I mean, he's going to be just slinging the rock. I mean, just kind of crazy to think about. Like I said, has nothing to do with how good LSU is as a team, but just crazy to see.
And I guess I should apologize to LSU baseball fans. It's just my ignorance here. You won the championship in 2023, and that escaped me completely. And you've won it 7 times already. So, Coastal's still quite the underdog here, even though they have a championship in recent history. But I think the thing that I've seen and a lot of people seen, if you've tuned into college baseball lately, is I think they've won 24 straight games or 23 straight games. So hell of a run. And when you get hot in baseball, it's hard to stop you.
Yeah, and yeah, we're not even going to talk about the Braves and being hot because that's not an issue.
Well, that's a
Losing streak
carousel.
is hot.
That's a
Chris
seesaw.
Chris and I were both watching the game that sent LSU to these finals the other night,
Yes.
and just the turns that game took back and forth, and the action was actually very exciting. Better than any pro game I've watched in a long time. I mean, the atmosphere was hot. The teams were great.
Yeah.
LSU has a first baseman that can change the game with a single swing of a bat. I think I told Chris he's currently like third all time in the home runs list in program history. He's got like 63 or 64 home runs, and he just the ball just pops off his bat and just it goes a mile. Just cool to see.
We have a guest.
Is that him? Is that the first baseman from LSU? Is you guys talking about me? All good things if you're watching, of course. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. I haven't watched a Coastal game yet. We watched a lot of the SEC tournament. We watched a lot of the LSU games. We watched some Georgia games and stuff like that. So I have not made a Coastal game yet, but I can't speak enough on how they will stack up against LSU. So I don't want to make a prediction necessarily, but I find myself pulling for LSU in these games. I'm not sure why. So I guess it's go Tigers in this house.
Guess be go Coastal for me. I don't know. I'm nearby. I have lived in Louisiana. Didn't enjoy that, but I don't know. I guess I just like the underdog in a lot of cases.
Well, to me, Coastal is only as cool as the color of their football field. And so, unless you tell me that their baseball diamond is the same color, I'm not going to care quite as much.
No, it's not.
Brian, you want to throw a team out there and break the tie? I'm LSU, and Chris is Coastal. Who do you have?
Being a Georgia fan and an SEC fan, I get it, LSU is in the SEC, but I'm not pulling for them. I can't do it. I'm, go Coastal.
And
honestly, I haven't watched any of the baseball, which is kind of surprising, but I've been a little busy. But I'm gonna go Coastal. I'm looking at a story calling them not a Cinderella story, but that just tells me they probably are, or kind of you get the feel. And I always like the underdog, so I'm gonna go Coastal.
And I think we spent like 10 minutes talking about this one episode, and the beauty of this is it's a best of three. That's great. We don't have to sit here and play this out for potentially a week and a half to get to a game 7 to get your champion. We're just gonna go best of three, and I think that makes the College World Series very watchable. And I'm not saying that the pros should go down to 3 games for the championship or anything like that. Just saying that maybe if you want to do 3-game series out there, shorten up the season a little bit, like we talked about a few weeks ago, it would be a nice start.
I wouldn't mind maybe not for the World Series like you're talking about, but the playoffs. I'd almost like that best of 3 kind of feel.
I think you can build it up. You can have the World Series be 7 games. You can have like your ALCS and NLCS be 5-game series, and then every series before that be 3. I mean, as long as you're still in an odd number, you're guaranteed a winner, but you can cut it down on the number of games that it takes to even reach that World Series. And that way there's a little bit less player fatigue and so on and so forth, because we talked about this ad nauseum at this point. Baseball is a very long, very grueling season compared to a lot of other sports. And when you get to the playoffs, these guys I'm sure there's a lot of arm fatigue. There's a lot of just body fatigue, just a lot of built up, nagging injuries and stuff like that. So you want to get the best versions of these teams by the time you're trying to crown a champion. So why not lessen the playoff number of games that it takes to reach the World Series and go about it that way?
You do the same thing in basketball. Just any sports where you're running series like that, I'd like to see that, and see what that looks like. But I also think you could do with the college, you were talking about a 3-game series, it makes it more watchable. But maybe when you get to this game, the Coastal and the LSU, do they then expand that to 5 games, but everything else is 3 games, just to make it a little bit more dramatic at the end, I guess.
I can see that.
Well, let's go real crazy, and why don't we get a best of 3 for the college football championship? Yeah.
Ooh,
That is a bit too crazy.
no, that's too
Talk
far.
about body fatigue. Good Lord.
I'm just saying anything that we can do to get more football isn't like less baseball, less basketball, more football. That's pretty much my recipe for happiness right there.
How me and Brian know about these damn college football series. It seems like the Dogs had one with Texas,
Yeah.
and it was about to be a best of 3. I think there was a world where that could have played out, but luckily for haters of both teams, you didn't have to see a game 3. And it, if you're doing the math here, a game 3 wouldn't have been necessary if we're doing the best of 3 because Georgia took games 1 and 2.
There you go.
I actually had that conversation. I don't remember if it was with Chris or maybe a couple of my other friends, but I said that almost hurt Georgia in a way, just based off of where those teams were health wise and everything like that. That if you did get Georgia and Texas in the playoffs, I would actually pick Texas. And I think I picked Texas the first 2 times as well.
I
But
did
that
too.
was just a vendetta of my college football pick 'em. I said I'm always going to pick Georgia to lose, even if they're playing, Coastal Carolina or something. Like I'm picking the other team just out of my own morals. Like I think I came in third in the pick 'em, and maybe if I'd picked Georgia more often, I would finish a little higher. But it's fine. My morals are more important to me. But I think Texas having so much information, the familiarity of opponent, and then also being healthier at that stage of the game, I think when you got into the playoffs, I think Texas would actually edge one out over Georgia. But as we saw, that wasn't the case, and Ohio State reigned supreme. So that's all fine and well. But I guess I'll put you guys on the spot talking about what we thought was going to happen last year. Let's move forward into this year. I know Brian said it's never too early to start talking about college football. Chris is very excited for this college football game and everything that's about to come out. So moving into this season, do you guys want to throw a very early national champion pick out there? Just who you think is the team to win the Natty? Because it was pretty close to this time last year that I had said Ohio State. Of course, we didn't have a publicized podcast at the time for anybody to check the receipts. Maybe there's a tweet or a Facebook post out there somewhere. But I said this is the year for Ohio State purely because if it's not, I think Ryan Day gets fired. The talent that they had coming in, the talent that they brought back, it had to be this year, especially after Michigan won it the year before. You had to answer that if you were Ohio State, and they did. So who's that team, whether it be a dark horse or you think just a glaringly obvious favorite? Throw a name out there and kind of put your name into that pen and say, this is who I'm going with. Chris, you want to go first?
I don't.
Yeah, go ahead.
It's actually a hard call because, I like Texas. Obviously we haven't really seen Manning too much, so that could be really great or really nothing. I know my son's probably going to kill me for saying that, Texas is even in the hunt.
They are in the hunt.
I know they are.
That's just the facts. I got some teams I don't like that are in the hunt too, but I can't change that.
So I think Texas would be an easy choice. Georgia's always going to be an easy choice. I think Tennessee, we talked about this before the podcast. I think they're going to be out of it, losing their quarterback.
We did.
I don't know. Penn State's not bad. Ohio State's never a bad option. I think without seeing a whole lot of spring ball, without seeing, no practice hasn't started, games obviously haven't started. I think there's no way you can tell. You could just flip a coin like earlier and go with any of those I just said. Oregon should definitely be in the talks. I don't know. I don't know that I can make with that list. that I just spit off, that's probably close to a top 10, which
It
I don't
is.
think I named type 10 schools, but those teams should be in a top 10.
I've got a way too early poll pulled up here. It's got some of the returning players that was released May 8th by Mark Slabaugh. I think I said that right. I've heard his name 100 times. I'm having trouble repeating it. But yeah, it pretty much like is all the usual suspects. Ohio State being at fifth, it's a little surprising coming off a championship, but I guess what I would be concerned about out of all these top teams is Oregon. Oregon lost the soul of their team, the huge production, and I don't know how they're going to replace it. And you can also say that about Texas and Georgia and Ohio State as well. But I feel like Oregon, while incredibly talented, does not have a supporting cast on the level of some of those other teams.
But don't they just reload like an Alabama, Georgia? They
That's what I'm saying. I'm not sure that Oregon does that at the same level. Like if Georgia and Alabama and Texas and teams like that and Ohio State lose what they lose and they go back in at 100% reload, I feel like Oregon's coming back in at a 60% reload.
Yeah, I could definitely see that being a program with ebbs and flows. But their head coach being who he is, I think that there is a much more importance on, like a higher level of importance placed on recruiting, because I think he wants that consistency. It's what he learned under Kirby Smart, who he learned under Nick Saban. I think you're seeing that coaching tree branch out. And so Oregon should be a stable, I don't know if you want to call them a powerhouse, but at least a strong contender year in and year out. But you're going to see some performance ebbs and flows, and a lot of that I think has to do with the quarterback position. But that being said, I think there are two teams that you got to look for as kind of a boom or bust kind of year. Like if it's not this year, when is it going to be? I think one of those teams is Clemson. You look at Cade Klubnik coming back. The receiving room that he has to work with this year is insane. He's got a couple of good running backs. I don't know how good that defense is going to be, but that offense should be in position to keep them in every game, if not blowing out some lesser opponents for sure. I think Klubnik should have his most impressive year to date. He was very good as a freshman, had some growing pains since then, but I think this is that year that they kind of put everything together, and Clemson looks not necessarily as good as they looked back in the Deshaun Watson or Trevor Lawrence days, but certainly the best they've looked since Trevor Lawrence left. This could be a very, very good Clemson team in what I view to be a weak ACC conference. But I think the team, Brian kind of dropped it a moment ago, but Penn State, you look at Drew Aller coming back one more year. He was somebody that could have gone into the draft this past year and didn't. He came back, kind of that unfinished narrative. You look at what happened with Michigan. You look at what happened with Ohio State last year, where they had guys that could have gone to the pros like Emeka Egbuka and Travion Henderson that said, nope, we're coming back and we're adding to it. We're getting a Quinshon Judkins. We're bringing a new quarterback in Will Howard. They basically assembled the Avengers to make a run for the championship, and they did it. It's kind of that perfect storm. Look at 2019 LSU with Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, Thaddeus Moss, Clyde Edwards-Helaire. They had that perfect storm kind of year, and nobody could hang with them. I could see Penn State having that type of year this year. They take advantage of Michigan and Ohio State losing a lot of talent and not being able to reload, kind of similar to the way that you're talking about where Alabama and Georgia often does. And Penn State takes advantage, and this is their year. A third straight championship win for the Big Ten on a third different team. Drew Aller, the pair of running backs that they have, Katron Allen, the receiving room is much, much improved over what it was last year. They've had a couple of transfers come in. They've got some young guys that have grown and matured. That offense is one to watch, I think, in college football this year. So if I had to put my name to a team, don't sleep on Penn State. I think that's the one.
They're actually on ranked number one in that poll that I saw.
There you go.
So not quite as out there as you would think.
A
And
fun
you brought
team,
up
though, I think, to watch this year that you wouldn't think about because of who they lost is Arizona State. Cam Skattebo being in the NFL, that's a huge loss because he represented so much of their offense last year. But Sam Leavitt, their quarterback, is a stud. He's going to do some big things this year, and they've got a wide receiver who's also going to be a monster this year as well. So even if just a fun college football 26 team to play with, bully some lackluster defensive backs, Arizona State is a fun team. I don't know that they repeat their postseason success from last year. Like I said, they're not going to have Cam Scatterbo to, ball over the entire Texas defense single-handedly like he did last year. But they can do some fun things in their conference as well.
I think BYU could be a team to look out for too. They're ranked 10th on this early poll, and they've been flirting with greatness for a little bit now. And I think they just go under the radar because they're just a bunch of straight edge Mormons, and that shouldn't change your opinion about athletics, but it often does. You think, well, they're not going to be as tough as the guys that go out there and let loose and have a lot more fun, but they're always there. 10, 11 wins every decade.
And I don't think Oklahoma gets dog walked. I don't think they're going to be a basement bottom dweller team in the SEC this year. They brought in a new quarterback and running back combo. I'm a big fan of their running back that's this year. His name is Jaden Ott. He played at Cal past couple of years and had some issues just staying healthy. But you see, better blocking tends to do great things for a running back's health because they're not getting hit in the knees as soon as they get a handoff in the backfield. And just what he can create with the ball in his hands, I think that could be a really good pairing. And their quarterback is just his name is escaping me right now. I could look it up, but he's one of those guys that's very toolsy but very inconsistent. He's similar to like a Johnny Manziel where he tries to create a lot of exciting plays. It's not going to levy itself into a very long NFL career, very successful. But for college football, it should be fun, and Oklahoma will be a good team this year, I think, to watch as well.
And that's historically a team that's always reloading, and it was weird to see them so down, and I don't think that can stay. They've got a huge fan base, a huge recruiting success, and just to see them that far down, I just don't think it can stay that way.
They got the all-important thing, too.
Oh,
I
yeah.
do want to circle back just for a second. You said, you were talking about the ACC and it being weak and Clemson just being the stud. I know last year the Seminoles, a little bit of a flop. They had a lot of hype going into the year, and then they kind of just, got beat by Georgia Tech and kind of just got stomped on. Do you think, obviously, the Seminoles, coming back and now that they don't have the hype, maybe they can settle down and play good football? And also with the ACC bringing in Bill Belichick, does that change the scheme, or is he still a couple of years out from really making a difference in that conference?
Well, I think the big thing that helps Florida State is the big thing that possibly hinders North Carolina. North Carolina has talent in place. I just don't know that it's the wave-making level of talent that you would need, whereas what Florida State has is consistency. Their coach has been there. He's been recruiting. You've got those cycles coming in. What really broke Florida State was the playoff committee. They broke Florida State's spirit like Jordan Travis broke his leg. I mean, it was just shattered into pieces. And last year, they didn't bounce back from that. The team was hurt emotionally and mentally, and you had to get them away from that. And I think now they will play a more consistent, more watchable, palatable brand of football. I just don't know that they necessarily have the pieces in place to compete with one of those perfect storm type teams that are just going to have that one year where nobody in their conference competes with them. And NC State is not going to upset Clemson. Watch me say that, and it happens. The teams like Pitt, the teams like North Carolina that can usually have a mediocre to okay season just aren't going to cut it this year. You're not going to have an 8-5 team representing the conference in, they'll be there in bowl games, sure, but they're not going to be there at the end of it, not a playoff team. I think that Clemson can be a playoff team, certainly in the expanded format, that we've seen. But I just think Clemson is that team this year for the conference. And I think Bill Belichick should maybe take a year to get his guys in place, get his system in place, and then North Carolina will be one to watch for, but not so much this year.
And then can I just
go ahead.
I was just going to tack on to that question, real quick answer here. North Carolina and Florida State, over or under 7-5.
I'll say over on Florida State,
Okay,
under on the Tar Heels.
that makes sense.
And I don't know that that's an indictment on Bill Belichick at this point. I think it's just you almost have to give somebody like that has been such a stout figure in NFL circles to come back to the NCAA does not necessarily mean that he's pressing the easy button. It's
Right.
not that he's used to coaching up here and now it's a different ball game down here. I'm not saying that Bill Belichick is not going to be great for that team or that program. I just think you can't expect him to show up and 3 months later they're a powerhouse because coaching doesn't fix everything. You're competing against much larger forces. If you have equal footing coaching between two teams, the team that's going to be more established, have the same scheme, that chemistry, those things that you can't always compete with, and certainly the money is always going to win out. And I think that he just doesn't have at North Carolina this year what he will over the next couple of years to really compete.
Yeah,
Sure.
I would say he's probably 2 to 3 years out, and that's kind of true to most any coach that comes in and takes over a program. Kirby Smart was the same way when he came to Georgia. He had a couple of rough years right there to begin with. Not to say he's a bad coach; he's a great coach, but it takes a while. You got to get your recruited players in there. You've got people that were recruited, in previous years that may not line up with uh, your offense that you're calling or your defense, either whatever mind you are. I think it takes a while to change the team. And one of the teams that you see that with is Georgia Tech. That coach down there has changed that program significantly. Do I think they're a natty contender? No. But do I think they have another really, really good year and they start stringing some back to back good years? I wouldn't sleep on Georgia Tech in the ACC. I'm just telling you. I think he's getting his players in. I think this is his third year, fourth year. So you should start seeing a huge change. And you saw it last year with them beating Florida State and looking good all the way through the year. I don't remember what their record was, but it was a winning record. It wasn't a losing record, which is what Georgia Tech ran for. And I do know that they had an old Georgia Southern coach, and that style of offense just doesn't play anymore. And I really like Georgia Tech this year. I think they're going to do pretty good things in the ACC. I don't see teams running over them unless you just get that. If Clemson, if Brad's right and Clemson is that powerhouse, you might see that be a little bit of a blowout. But overall, I think Georgia Tech's going to hold their own in the ACC.
They certainly could be a top 3 team in the conference, but we've seen when conferences have that down year, being a top 3 team in a bad conference isn't necessarily on the radar as far as anything else is concerned. Like I said, it just, to me, I think Clemson should win the conference handedly this year.
And maybe we should call it right there because the three of us, if we start talking about college football, I think we spent 25 minutes on the ACC alone and only 4 teams of it. So we should maybe pull back on the reins here.
Sure.
I think we'll have plenty of future content where we make people tired of listening to that sort of thing. And I've got my own channel coming out soon that's dedicated completely to college football. So I know how easy it is to get carried away, even just by myself.
Yeah, for sure. Brian, did you want to touch on the U.S. Open at all, or
Yeah, I mean,
uneventful?
Yeah, JJ Spawn won it. Congrats to him. Super hard golf course. I said it in the last podcast. I believe there was a albatross hit on Friday, I believe, which is super, super rare. If you don't know what that is, basically he in a par 5, which should take you 5 strokes to get down there and get in the hole, he did it in 2, which is crazy. I almost think it's a little bit more rare than an ace or a hole in one. So congrats to him. I can't remember who did it, but it was a crazy good shot. It was all over ESPN and the Golf Channel and stuff like that. So this week, I'm not sure the tournament, but I don't think it's a very big tournament. Um, I don't even know that I've watched it. Like I said, I haven't watched a lot of TV because I've been on a beach somewhere. So hopefully better updates next week. So we won't spend a lot of time on golf. Moving over to NASCAR.
Well, real quick, Brian, before you do
Nope.
that,
Yep.
it's very easy for people to point out when you're wrong about something. And I don't
Sure.
think people get credit for being right on stuff enough. So I did want to shout you out. I know you touched on it just a second ago, and I was going to bring this up as well. But you spent a good bit of time on last week's podcast talking about how difficult of a course this was. And I watched a little bit on Saturday, I believe it was. I turned it on, and the very first words that I heard them speak was how difficult of a course it was. It was Oakmont, I think is what you called it.
Yeah.
And
Oakmont's
they were
no
talking
joke.
about how this is a course that humbles the best golfers in the world, because when you mess up a little bit on some courses, it's okay. But messing up a little bit on this course is messing up a lot of it. It's very
Yeah.
easy to get yourself into a terrible situation. And basically, they were regurgitating the same things that I heard you say on Thursday, they were saying on Saturday. So I was like, look at Brian, knowing exactly what he was talking about. It kind of gives a little bit of credence to what you were saying. So I did just want to shout you out for that and the knowledge that you shared
Appreciate it.
last week. So
And it is. It's a crazy course because it's not a lot of water, not a lot of tree hazard, and you would think, okay, that's great, but when the rough is like 6 to 8 inches deep, and literally you're looking down and you cannot see your golf ball. You're just swinging and hoping at that point, and that's just crazy. I couldn't imagine playing there. I don't know that I'd even want to try to be an amateur golfer, and that kind of course. I don't know that I would even find that enjoyable, to be honest with you. It would be. I'm not one that gets mad. I'm a very fast uh, golfer, meaning I like just driving up, don't spend a lot of time looking at it, hit it, go on to the next shot. Um, I know a lot of people. I played with a gentleman, really, really good golfer, a couple of weeks ago in a tournament, and he was very much. He had his routine. He had, and he was really, really good. So, obviously he's found something, and I don't mind that. But I am not one of those. I just like getting out there, walking and being in nature and the calm and the peace. With that being said, I'm not a very angry golfer. You see people throwing their clubs, breaking their clubs, things of that nature. I'm not that guy. I'm there to be happy. I'm not there to be miserable. But I feel like Oakmont is one of those golf courses that I would be absolutely miserable, because I would not have to take a dozen golf balls. I would have to take a store with me, because I would lose every single one of them. And it just wouldn't be a lot of fun to me. But, again, congrats to JJ Spawn. That's a hard golf course, and, he deserves it. So I'm happy to see it.
yeah. And I think you had said you found something on NASCAR as well.
Yeah, not a lot. It's NASCAR. They drive in circles.
They make left turns with the best of them.
They're at Pocono. They do have some road courses in there. I think they were at Mexico City, which is a road course, a couple weeks ago or last week. This weekend they're at Pocono, which is a big tri-oval. It's kind of like a big triangle. Slow corners, fast turn or fast straightaways. So, if you enjoy that type of racing, that's where they're at. And looks like their weekend after that, they're going to be in Atlanta. So, back to a very much a drive fast, turn left. So, wanted to give NASCAR a little bit of love. I think Joey Logano is in the lead as far as points. And really that can change out it's like any other sport. When it gets to the playoffs, that's when points matter. Other than, if you've got to make a cut line in NASCAR. So if you don't make that cut line, you're just not in the hunt for the rest of the season. So you're just there to win races and make money at that point. Doesn't matter. You could win 3 and it won't get you back in it. So it's a little bit of a difference in their point system. I quit following it when it went to that format. So I may get back into it. Who knows? I still think they took the redneck out of it, and when they took the fighting and the brawls and all the fun stuff, I don't necessarily. If I wanted to watch people go fast and turn left, I'd get on 285. So, but yeah, that's kind of all I have on NASCAR and golf.
Yeah, and I don't think I really had anything else. I don't know if Chris did as well. But
It
pretty
looked
good
like you got
discussion.
a little surprise visitor back there.
Yeah. Get her up here. It's been a little while since Marley's made a podcast appearance.
Yeah.
She doesn't always understand what we're doing up here. She just knows that I talk to Uncle Brian and Uncle Chris a lot. So I try to tell her that when I'm going upstairs so she doesn't come up here, but it doesn't always work.
If nothing else, she makes the podcast look better.
Yeah, a little bit. Maybe when her hair's brushed. She actually got her very first haircut yesterday, so that was somewhat exciting. But she's apparently pretty mad at her mama, so I guess I need to go and figure out what's going on with that. But I appreciate the discussion, and we'll do it again next week.